to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ebro, Laura Rosenberg, here every day. And today, Andrew Yang, who's running for mayor of New York City, back on the program. Yang, what's up, buddy?
Hey, guys, great to be here. Thank you for having me. Hot 97 every day.
Your word.
So you made the big decision. Why?
You know, I'm running for mayor because of what we're seeing and feeling around us every day. Our city is hurting. We're missing 25,000 of our neighbors and friends and relatives. We're missing hundreds of thousands of jobs. Crime and public safety concerns are rising in every community. This is a crisis, and we all need to get in there and help. So I'm running for mayor because I think I can accelerate our comeback from this crisis and make it so that we're a comeback city. But also, I think we need to become the anti-poverty city. I'm running for mayor in part on a pledge of $1 billion in guaranteed minimum income to the folks who are hurting the most right now.
So let's get right to public safety first, because I feel like one of the biggest gangs and strong arms in New York is the NYPD, who's riddled with issues. The Attorney General of the state is coming down on them. You're going to have to deal with them toe-to-toe. Talk to us about that, because they strong arm a lot of politicians. They scare a lot of people. They have some problems. There's some great police officers too, but it's riddled with problems. I mean, look, their union co-signed Donald Trump the first time they decided that this year was the year.
Saw that. We all saw that. Yeah,
like,
that was
so
not a good
clearly,
look.
and I haven't heard anything from them after this insurrection when we saw the white domestic terrorist temper tantrum in D.C. So how are you going to deal with holding police accountable and approaching public safety different?
The first thing we need to do is we need a civilian police commissioner of the NYPD. And if you look at the national government, we have a civilian head of the military. You have someone who's actually in charge that's independent of the culture. And that's what would, to me, make the biggest difference, because what's happening right now is you appoint a commissioner who's kind of part of the club. And then when they get recommendations from the CCRB and other places, they're more likely to be like, I don't think I'm going to go that direction. So we need a genuinely independent civilian police commissioner. And I think that would be a game changer in a lot of ways, because a lot of the way you change these cultures is from the top. You know, if you have someone from the top who's willing to go with the flow, then things will not change as meaningfully as we need them to change in the NYPD.
You had a moment the other day that it was a misstep, or at least maybe a poor choice of words, where you said that you talked about how you're not living full-time in the city because of how difficult it would be to have your kids and you working in a 2-bedroom apartment. Obviously, a lot of New Yorkers would love to have a 2-bedroom apartment in New York. People are saying that maybe showed like a disconnect between the people of New York. How do you explain that word slip, or however you describe it the other day?
You know, I wish people had seen the entire interview. As it was like a sentence lifted out of context. The fact is, I feel very deeply and painfully the reality that New Yorkers are living every day. And I would say that any parent who's trying to educate their child in a time where our schools are shut down, online education sucks. We just call it. It's the worst. And I've got a special needs child who, when you put him in front of a computer, he'll just like disappear, 5 minutes later and run around. So you feel like, like it feels like you're, spending most of your time trying to get the child to learn. So the quote, I can 100% see how people would see that and say like, hey, this dude doesn't get it. This dude's out of touch. But most people know that I've been working on behalf of the people for years. And a lot of the past number of months, I was in Georgia helping Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff flip the Senate, which is going to activate tens of billions of dollars right here in New York City. I was helping Joe and Kamala get Trump out. People know I've been working for the people the whole time.
Yang, speaking of Trump, when we had you on last, it was around impeachment time. And, I've maintained through much of this that if Trump doesn't go to jail and lose a lot of money, we will have learned or done nothing. You said to me that, we're not a developing nation. We don't just remove our presidents and jail them. Do you still feel that same way?
That was pre-insurrection. When you talked about the riots in the Capitol, and you had Capitol Police sort of somehow just kind of letting folks through. We all know. I mean, I said, man, if this were a group of black protesters like that, we all know there would have been like 10 to 100 times as many bullets fired and fatalities and everything else. Like the thing that came to mind for me is like, man, if you want to have an insurrection, like send white people, because like
nothing's gonna happen.
Up there in a way, you're like, what the hell is going on? So post-insurrection, I think impeaching Trump's the right move. I think pursuing criminal actions to the fullest extent of the law is the right move. I mean, everything I was saying was like pre-attempt to wrest control of the government.
Well, but I guess, and the reason I bring it up is because I could see what this guy was, right? And I could see what his followers thought he was. People like yourself, what were you not seeing, or what were you not taking serious with his rhetoric and the alignment with white supremacy prior to the insurrection? Because you, like many people, thought Donald Trump at some point would become presidential. When it was time for him to, get out of the office, he would do the right things. What are people not taking serious here?
No, I never thought Donald Trump was going to become presidential. The fact is, I ran for president because I was so concerned. Like, I was like, holy shit, our country's, heading in a very, very nasty direction. Like, I need to do something about it. And I thought alleviating poverty would at least help keep this country together, at least to a higher degree on multiple levels. And it would elevate the situation of tens of millions of people of color who right now are being left behind in the economy. But on my side before, like I did believe that, it's not your first move to say like, hey, ex-president, let's throw him in jail, because like that ends up destabilizing a lot of societies. But Trump has destabilized us. So at this point, let's do it.
Right. I do appreciate the ideas that you have around the need for all people in America to have access to more money. And talk to us about how you're going to do that in New York City.
New York City, I am so pumped for this. So my organization donated $1 million in the Bronx at the beginning of the pandemic. 1,000 people got $1,000. And I actually ran into one of the families yesterday when I was in the Bronx, and it was so touching. I just came up to me and was like, hey, man, that $1,000 made a huge difference. And I was like, oh, my God, like that was incredible. Now we're going to come back with $1 billion with a B a year. That's what I'm talking about, New York City. And we can do it. So one of like the hidden opportunities is that we are spending so much money on folks when they're hitting the streets, and hitting our services. And city services are very expensive. We probably, you might have seen the stories. We're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on people in various circumstances. We're actually going to get a lot of that money back if we keep people in their homes, if we keep people in more secure situations, if we keep people from losing their mental health. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can do to try and stave off some of the enormous expenses that are getting incurred in the back end. This is going to be a very tough time for New York City. We're going to have to do several things at once, but spending $1 billion on our people is the right move. And I want to go bigger. I think people know if I had my druthers, we'd be giving everyone $1,000 a month or more. I'm going to try and activate resources with that $1 billion. I think I can double it. I think there are ways that we can make that $1 billion multiply.
So how would that $1 billion get distributed? Like you gave $1,000 to 1,000 people in the Bronx. How would the $1 billion get distributed in New York?
So the $1 billion would go to the approximately 500,000 most distressed New York City residents. We would lift everyone out of extreme poverty in New York City. And we, again, save so much money in terms of shelters and homelessness services and a bunch of other costs right now. And the plan then is to start with this 500,000 New Yorkers that need it the most and then grow from there.
Where's this $1 billion come from? Who loses? Where it's either new money, so somebody's paying more taxes, or somebody loses money. Where does it come from?
So we're going to have to wring some inefficiencies out of the city agencies, but that's not going to fill the budget hole. We're looking at like a $5 billion budget hole. So this new $1 billion we're talking about, some of it is going to come from savings, but I've got a few ideas on how we can activate new resources here in New York City. And some of the biggest landowners in New York are not paying property taxes, which is our main source of revenue that the city has control over. As one example, I'll call out Madison Square Garden has property tax abatement of $40 million a year. Imagine that. MSG, like, they should be paying tens of millions of dollars. And there are other tax exempt institutions through various loophole, not really loopholes. I mean, that, it's legit.
Well, usually tax abatements are given to somebody who's beautifying, so they remodeled the garden and got a tax abatement for spending the money and et cetera, et cetera. But how long has that abatement been going on?
For years, and it's like meant to expire, and then they keep extending it. And this was the thing that made me a little bit mad, is like they actually threatened to move if they didn't keep the abatement. I was like, you're going to move the garden? You're going to move the Knicks? Like, that's like the dumbest bluff I've ever heard. You know what I mean? So there are organizations and institutions in New York City that have been getting a free ride on city services like fire department, and other things. And if they pay their fair share, we can get some money into the system pretty quick.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I've learned about New York City is, is getting the proposal through. So what alignments, let's say you win the job as mayor, how do you align and who do you align with to get this stuff done? Because that, this is a good old boy network in New York City, which is why things are often held up in bureaucracy, not fixed, slowed down. They make it tough for mayors and wait out and just wait until, the mayor is ineffective. How do you plan to align to get these things done?
Oh, I was in Brownsville yesterday, and then someone just said straight up, I was with Latrice Walker, the state assemblywoman there. And then a guy walked by and said, like, hey, he's running for mayor. Like, what's he going to do for this community? And that really has to be the question that we answer. Like, there are a lot of New York City residents who don't feel like the government's looking out for them. And I'm going to suggest I'm the ideal person to actually cut through some of that bureaucracy, because I'm going to get in there. I don't owe some of the entrenched interests like 10 years of favors. I'm going to do what's right for New York City. People are going to see that, look, we're going to try and head in this direction. And if people don't get on board, then I'm actually going to be in much better position to say, look, like, we're going to head this direction, and you should get on board because it's going to be good for New York.
All right. Ebro, can we ask a couple of fun questions for our prospective mayor here?
Always, man. Yang is always fun. Yang gang.
Thanks, guys.
I need to ask you this. Whenever we talk, we talk wrestling off the air, but I got to ask you on the air. Who do you believe to be the all-time best when it comes to the ability to do it all? The in-ring, mic, bad guy, good guy. Who do you think was the best total package as a professional wrestler of all time?
I think of The Rock. And I think of The Rock in part because he was so charismatic and compelling. He was a good face or heel. And the great thing about him is he could lose and just not lose any of his shine. You know what I mean? Like, he'd lose a match and just come back the next day and everyone like,
Yeah, I saw him get in like 2001 before a match with Austin. Austin distracted him. He got rolled up and lost to Gregory Helms, I think. Doesn't matter at all.
Because there are a lot of the other guys who are big names who kind of needed an aura of invincibility. You know what I mean? It's like, Undertaker undefeated at WrestleMania, or Goldberg, in his like crazy streak. And The Rock didn't need that stuff. The Rock was so good that he could lose to Gregory Helms and be like just as big a star the next week.
You think The Rock could legitimately be president one day? I mean, that seems to be something people still think is possible.
I hope that if The Rock ever decides to run, he gives me a call, because I could tell him what that campaign life is like, what to watch out for. But one of the reasons why people think of The Rock as a very, very viable presidential contender is we sense that our career politicians are not getting a lot of the job done. Like, we're all getting frustrated. We're all getting disenchanted. Look at the vaccine rollout. We're all looking around being like, what the heck is going on? It's like at this point, people are looking for a leader who's independent and just wants to get things done. And that's one reason why someone like The Rock has a lot of appeal. And I hope that's one reason why I'll have a lot of appeal here in New York.
Well, and there's just voters out there who just want to vote for a tough guy. Let's keep it a buck. Some voters, they're like, oh, he talks tough. I want to vote for him. They don't care about his intellect. They don't care about what he actually could understand business-wise. How you think Donald Trump got the job?
That's a dark reality, and I compared our politics to a reality TV show. It's one reason why no one should count out The Rock if he ever did decide to run. I'll tell you, there are three things that have much more parallels than anyone imagines. So this gives you another field of potential contenders: politicians, pro wrestlers, comedians. There's actually more overlap in those three than most people imagine. So I think you could see a comedian run for office very successfully too.
Well, we've seen that in other countries.
And we've said on this show, if Donald Trump wasn't actually the result of people dying and didn't actually get the most powerful job in the world, he's funny. He says things that are funny.
Right.
It's just that he sucks.
Yeah, just he's terrible. And
he actually has a job that can hurt people, and he's done it.
Yes. Well, this is really a problem for us, is that like entertainment and news have kind of merged, and politics has become theater because you can't get anything done. And so at this point, like, people are just willing to vote or support someone who's like making them feel certain ways.
Right.
It's really dark because the reality around us has been disintegrating for years, for communities of color for generations. And we're getting distracted by the news cycle of the day or the moment. And social media has made this worse, not better. I mean, social media has been positive with some things, but it's made it worse in terms of driving just news cycles of argument that actually don't solve the problems.
The flip side, I guess, of like a sexy entertainer candidate would be the guy who actually won the election, a career politician who flawed in all. I think one thing no one would argue is that Joe Biden loves this country. What do you think about Joe Biden, the man? How much interaction have you had with him, and how effective do you think he can be as president?
I am pumped about Joe's new COVID plan, almost $2 trillion, $20 billion just for vaccines. I mean, yeah, I hung out with Joe an awful lot on the trail. He and I spoke before, after each other. And I got to say, it's funny, like, you can find out a lot about someone by how they treat you backstage. Joe was always warm and gracious and generous with me, even when Andrew Yang was like down here and he was up here. And when he had no reason to be nice to me, he's just a really good dude. He's very, very hard not to like. He is exactly the same off stage as he is on stage.
Going forward, running for mayor was something that has been kind of, we've been hearing rumblings about for a while. But it does seem like you have this politician bug. Even though you've made money doing other things, it feels like staying in and around politics definitely has your interest. What did you learn on the campaign trail that really makes this something you want to do long term?
I was driven initially. Let's be honest. No one was calling for an Andrew Yang presidential campaign. The day. Like, I was just a dude. And the fact that now, I have some people who are excited about me that want to solve problems. I mean, I'm all the more pumped up to get to work in a way that's going to help people. If you can activate billions of dollars for working people and people of color, you need to do it. You know what I mean? So, and I have a much better shot of doing that in 2021 than I did in 2017 back in the day. I'm not even that big a fan of politics, to be honest with you. Like, I'm a fan of improving people's lives. And things are right now at a point where you're going to need government to get its shit together to improve people's lives. And so I'm running for office. But am I a fan of the ins and outs of politics? Heck no. Like, it's miserable. It's miserable in the sense that, like, all of like the tit for tat and like the,
the pettiness, the bureaucracy, the all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I believe fundamentally in democracy and fighting for people and everything else. But like, there are elements of the process that I could do without.
Andrew Yang for New York. Yang Gang is back, and he's bringing the money. What do you say to naysayers who make your campaign feel like some sort of cash contest? Because, you do roll it out in a way that's kind of game show hosty. Now, $1 billion for you, Andrew Yang. Like, I love it, but there are people who don't like it.
I would love for other folks just to up the ante. If Andrew Yang's like $1 billion in New York City, come with 2 billion, come with 3 billion. Like we can do it. Like I mean, that's where we should be heading, because we all know that money in people's hands is going to help them solve their own problems in a better way than like a speech or a soundbite.
There it is, Andrew Yang. Well, I'm sure we're going to be talking to you again, man. Welcome home to taking care of New York City.
Thank you, Ebro. Thank you, Rosenberg. You guys are the best, and I will come back anytime. You know, you guys will be like, I'll make a regular stop. I'll be a freaking like new host.
I'll
come on
listen,
all the freaking time.
Well, I know people have their issues with Mayor de Blasio, and rightfully so in many cases. But one thing we cannot knock him for, he has been a regular on this program. Right. So if you win, we expect to hear from you every few weeks.
Well, and the next time we have you on, we'll have more time. We're going to delve into homelessness, right? Because that's one of de Blasio's biggest failures, right? Figuring out how to get people under roofs off the street in New York. Yeah. That's been a big one.
I'll be back to talk about that. I've got some ideas. Just to give you a sneak peek, we've got a lot of underutilized hotels right now. And a lot of operators who are looking for an exit. Like if you go to them and say, hey, guess what? We'll take this hotel off your hands and then convert it to affordable or supportive housing. That's exactly what we should be doing right now.
There it is. Andrew Yang for New York. We'll be talking to you soon, man. Congrats on the run.
Congrats, man.
Thank you, guys. See you soon. New York City.